made it far less stable. See, now I got to do this all the time. See, when they took this off, it just made it for completely taking it apart has really compromised it. No, let me just do it.
I give you another minute.
Yeah, but see, I hate doing this.
Yeah.
Military stereotypes are challenged today with the trailblazing promotion of a U.S. female officer to four-star general. It was just announced that the vast majority of last year's doctorate degrees were earned by women.
We've come so far, but our news is changing for the worse. More women die from heart disease and stroke than men, even though it can be prevented. Make a change at GoRedForWomen.org today.
Oh, shoot.
Damn it. No, it's not you. I told you. When that was removed, it made it far less stable. Okay, I'll get it. Okay, I got it. Okay, here we are. I'm up. Hey everybody. Woo. Are we up on YouTube?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Mike hot.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. Boy, oh boy, did we have a good time last night, Lady B.
Yes.
Let's talk about it with Santita Jackson and friends. Wow. Diane Brownlee was the star of the show. You know, everybody loves Dwight McKee. We had Daphne with us, our morning star, and she's actually up so early this morning, so we love you all. We had a great time last night.
Thank you.
We got a chance to talk about Blagojevich just a little bit, but everybody was really amped up on the campaign.
Yeah.
So we're going to be talking about that today, just a little bit. On the Santita Jackson Show, please go on the YouTube page, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube page, and like and subscribe, please. And come on over here to Facebook and meet us over here with the Morning Stars. The Santita Jackson and Friends page. Please like and share, like and share, like and share. And get into that conversation last night. It's on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. I think I'll share it with WCPT today, right? Because we had a lot.
Yeah.
We had a lot. It was a lot. It was a really, really deep conversation about this election. People are really, really talking about it, and we're talking about it here on WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. And you can text me and call me on this line. Thank you, GWC Injury Lawyers, 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. And let's talk about why Illinois is the Mecca for black politics. The black vote is at the center of Democratic success. You cannot become the nominee and you cannot become president without it. So, what does that mean? And how did Chicago really become the center, the Mecca for black politics? I think it's very telling. As we're going into the black primary, the so-called black primary, which is where you and I will be this weekend, Lady B.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be talking, we're going to be doing a lot of Facebook, a couple of Facebook events down there. I'm going to do my show from down there so that we can talk to people, because Tom Steyer has become an issue. He's become a player in the South Carolina primary, and I want to talk to people about how he has become a player and what all of this means. Bernie Sanders is set to do much better with the black community in South Carolina. There's so much at play here. We cannot wait. Can you wait to get down there, Lady B?
I can't wait.
You're going to have some of the best food in the world.
Yeah.
Only thing is my grandmama's not there, bless her heart. She's up in heaven, and my great-grandmama. So, not the same state for me, but I love South Carolina. Boy, I had some of the most fun times of my life. I'm part of the generation that used to go south with our families for the for the for for, the, for my summer break. You know, half the summer I'd spend with my father's parents, and then the other half of the summer we'd spend with my mother's, and it was great. We're dedicating the show today to Katherine Johnson, the NASA mathematician who was portrayed in Hidden Figures, everybody. A trailblazing African American woman, mathematician, the human computer, everybody. And she, of course, was the winner of the uh, Presidential Medal of Freedom, so well deserved. And she really helped to break the color barrier at NASA and was at the center of some of the most groundbreaking work that they were able to achieve. And guess what, Lady B? Do you know she was my grandmother's neighbor?
Oh no.
They lived on the same block.
Oh wow.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know. I mean, I didn't know that was Mrs. Johnson. I didn't know that was the same person. Bless her heart. Down in Hampton, Virginia, everybody, an American hero. We're dedicating this show today to Katherine Johnson. She was the lead protagonist. Of course, they portrayed her life in Hidden Figures. Hidden Figures, everybody. While she was hidden, but no more, and thank God for her. Everybody, what is going on? Lady B, you ready to get to a few of these headlines?
Yes.
All right, let's get to it before we talk about the Mecca of black politics, the state of Illinois. All right, everybody, did you know that there was an analysis of primetime MSNBC programs, and they found that Bernie Sanders last year received the least and the most negative coverage of the top 2020 Democrats. Did you know that? Well, he is panicking all of the media outlets, everybody. And so we're going to be talking in the next hour about that, because now more and more stories are coming out about that. In fact, there is a wonderful piece in The Guardian. The headline reads, "The American media elite has learned nothing from 2016, and it will only get worse." Oh, what does that mean, Lady B? Do you think they're going to learn anything? I don't know, because guess what? Mike Bloomberg is launching an offensive on Bernie Sanders. Now, wait a minute. Shouldn't he be launching one on Donald Trump?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. I was just asking.
So.
But that's not what he's doing. He's going after Bernie Sanders. So what will all of that mean, everybody? And there's a leaked video. They keep leaking this video of this man, bless his heart, where he called Elizabeth Warren scary. And he knocked President Obama's first term. Oh, wow. Quote, he said in 2016 in his prior endorsement of Obama for re-election, "The second Obama election, I wrote a very backhanded endorsement of Obama, saying I thought he hadn't done the right thing, hadn't been good at things that I think are important, and Romney would be a better person at that. But Romney did not stick with the values that he had when he was governor of Massachusetts. And when he was governor of Massachusetts, everybody, he brought you what later became known as Obamacare."
Mm-hmm.
As you know, actually, that is the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, is a conservative remedy to what Senator Ted Kennedy was pushing. He was pushing universal single payer. After his son got cancer, he said, if I didn't have the money and the resources that I have, my son would be dead. No family should have to go through this. So he was pushing universal single payer 40 plus years ago. Fortunately, his son, Teddy Jr., survived. And so the conservative remedy coming out of the Heritage Foundation, a paper that came out in 1989, was the Affordable Care Act. That is what Hillary Clinton pushed 3 years later when her husband became president. They pushed her back. Then Romney picked it up when he was governor of Massachusetts. It worked. And then President Obama picked it up from him. It's important to understand the chain of command, everybody. Mike Bloomberg prepares media onslaught against Democratic frontrunner Bernie Sanders. According to CNBC, Mike Bloomberg's presidential campaign plans to unleash its cash flush media operation against Bernie Sanders in the wake of the Vermont senator's resounding victory. The campaign, which has already spent more than $500 million on media ad buys, plans a multi-pronged attack, including a publication of opposition research on Sanders. What do you all think about that, everybody? Call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Don't you think if he wants to defeat Trump, shouldn't he be doing that right now? Oh, okay. I just thought I'd ask. Okay, the Dow closed down 1,000 points yesterday. As the coronavirus fears slam Wall Street, everybody. 1,031 points to be exact, the worst day in 2 years for the blue chip index. What do you think about that? Health experts warn that the world is approaching a tipping point in the spread of the coronavirus as outbreaks erupt in Italy and Iran. And according to CNN.com, the coronavirus is fast becoming an economic pandemic. There are more than 79,000 cases already. Lady B, now, we were told that it was a concern, but that was a couple of weeks ago, not a crisis. What do you think? Do you think it's a crisis now? I think so. I think so. President Trump has been in India. People have been wondering what he's been doing there, but he did sell some American arms to India. President is a salesperson, and that is whatever president is in office, everybody. It's not just him. It's not. That is what they do. Harvey Weinstein faces charges in Los Angeles after he was found guilty in New York, everybody. He is facing up to 25 years in prison. Of course, the expose on his exploits with actresses. Of course, he was one of the biggest producers in the history of Hollywood. Well, it started the Me Too movement, really kicked it off. And so we will see how this goes. Yesterday, we really kind of, at least there was a tribute to Kobe Bryant. I don't know if he'll ever be put to rest because he was just so big, everybody. Did you see his wife, Vanessa? Oh, wow. Beautiful, so strong. And it was so touching. And I saw his parents there, too. I wish we could have heard from them. It would have been wonderful. Because so much of who Kobe was due to them. His parents have been married for decades. And it was they who shaped him. So, but his wife shaped him, too. They were together 20 years. So young, but they were together a long time. When I looked at them, I said, wow, you kind of got together like when my parents got together. My father and mother met when my mother was 17, about to turn 18. Isn't that interesting? Wow. Michael Jordan said he doesn't want to be a meme because he wept his way through. Bless his heart. But he said that was my baby brother. He drove me crazy, but he was the best. Did you know that Jenny Thomas, the wife of Clarence Thomas, is she's compiling a list of disloyal government officials that President Trump wants sacked? Do you think that's appropriate? Now, she is a very, very strong conservative activist. She's always been that. But what about that? Do you think that it is appropriate for the wife of a sitting justice of the U.S. Supreme Court that she's part of a conservative network of activists called Groundswell? Do you think that that's appropriate for her to do? I don't think so. Wow. And there was an Antarctica heat wave that melted 20% of an island slope in 9 days. What is going on, everybody? Ooh. And then the Bulls will be playing the Thunder tonight, and the Blackhawks will be playing the Blues. Of course, the stocks, the Dow dropped 1,031 points, losing 3.6% of value. We'll see where it goes today. The S&P lost 111 points. The NASDAQ lost 355 points. And, of course, we're expecting a high of 37 degrees, but it's going to be some rain this afternoon. But we're having a snowstorm, everybody. Snowstorm alert from 6 p.m. tonight to 6 p.m. tomorrow night. We could get 7 inches, 12 inches. We will see. All right, everybody. Chicago and Illinois have sent more blacks to Congress, both houses, than any state in the Union in the history of the Republic. More than 18. We, of course, have sent to Washington 3 U.S. senators who are African American. And, of course, we've delivered the first African American president to the world. But there is context for that. It didn't just happen, everybody. It didn't just happen. It's been happening over decades. So we need to talk about that. We need to talk about that. And wait a minute, who is this? Is this Joe who's calling us from Charleston?
No, Ike.
Is it Ike? I can't see. Okay, oops. Let me bring you up real quick. Ike, what's on your mind today?
Hey, good morning. And not to mention, Chicago's got WCPT, which thank God for that radio station you guys got going up there. Just give you a shout out and let you know what's happening down here in Charleston. It's a big deal. The debate's coming up tonight. And I'll just go ahead and tell you how it's all going to turn out as far as the primaries go. It looks like it's going to go Biden, and the second place is going to be, let's see, it's...
Will it be Steyer or will it be, or Sanders?
Steyer's. I think Sanders will take second. And, really, look, this is what's bugging me. For all the talk about the Russian money and the interference and this and that and the bots and the trolls and the yada yada, and the supposed fighting going on in the Democratic Party, we've taken over, since Trump got elected, we've taken over 12 different governorships. We've shown we're on a roll, and we're voting blue no matter who. When it comes down to Bernie, here's his message, and this is why I'm not impressed with him. Look, it's a continuation of what the Democratic Party should have been all along, which is the FDR Party. It's the second Bill of Rights. That's what we've wanted since FDR's time, and that's what we should have been wanting and working towards the whole time. And we wouldn't be in this mess. This is a repudiation and finally a showdown between bolster capitalists and their trickle-down lies and a government that is ready to produce and reconfigure their tax structure to take care of the American people and take care of our house first, which there's nothing wrong with that. And when you see what this has been done to the workers and these kids out here that are living in the morass that they're living in under all this debt and jobs that don't pay and no benefits, et cetera, ad infinitum, they know they've been took. And they know who's to blame. And, everybody out there pointing fingers, well, guess what? You Reagan Democrats, and I have to also put it on the Clintons. They wanted to go to the center. They wanted to get corporate money. They wanted to make deals. Well, if you haven't learned yet, that is not the way to go. You don't make deals with the enemy, and the Republicans are straight up the enemy. So here's the point. If you're not smart enough and you haven't learned your lesson yet, we will pay a hell of a price this next time. We might wind up a dictatorship. But if you're not smart enough to you already figured this out, you vote blue no matter who, and you vote it from the top of that ticket to the bottom, because we need the state, we need the Senate, we need all of it. And we need to take control so we can straighten this stuff out. But once and for all, I'm ready. Let's have a showdown. If it's going to be Bernie, fine, make it Bernie. But I'm tired of these oligarchs getting away with this crap, and you should be too, don't you think?
No, I am tired. We've been fighting against that. I'm not from the right wing of the party. I fought against the DLC. The DLC was formulated, and Dr. Bob Starks, Professor Emeritus from Northeastern Illinois University, is going to tell us how they came into being to counteract the effect of Jesse Jackson and the 2.5 million voters he brought into the party in 1984. So there has been a sustained fight against progressives in the Democratic Party. It's power concedes nothing without demand. I ain't mad at anybody, but you need to understand why we are where we are and how we need to get to where we need to get to. Okay? Bernie, nobody's going to give this to Bernie. Nobody's going to give this to Elizabeth. Nobody's going to give it. Well, some people are trying to give it to the moderates, to Biden, Buttigieg, and everybody else. But nobody's going to give you power. You have to seize it. Back in just a minute.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago traffic update.
What, hon?
Oh, we got 125 subscribers.
Are you very happy now?
Between Old River Road and 25th Avenue, there's been a collision involving a pedestrian.
Oh, wow.
Inbound Kennedy traffic's just a little tight. Nagel to Foster. It's a 1 or 2 minute delay. Inbound
And you know what I'm
Eisenhower
going to do?
jammed.
I'm going to get out of here because we should review the debate tomorrow
With a collision
when we come out. And I need to send you this Beauty with a Purpose.
Outbound 28.
And we'll talk about that. And we should do that like the last 30 minutes. Because I was telling them, we're in the height of the political season, so to do something like this is very difficult. I said, that's not where my audience is.
That's traffic.
You know, so I need to think about that. But I want to do that for Rod
WCPT
Dixon, because I think we can talk about the politics of beauty. Because you've got, you know, somewhere I can connect it to Me Too, and I think and women, and you know, beauty pageants. People, what is the point of a beauty pageant today? And as you look at the politics of beauty, you know, so much of our lives is driven by what we look like. You know, the more attractive women are, the more breaks you get. So I mean, I'd like to take the conversation there, because that's like, and that's also being very honest. What do you think?
I think so.
No need to make repairs, no
If you look
brokers
like
or
a
real
mole,
estate
you wouldn't have
commissions.
none. Yeah.
Get a market-based, hassle-free
Sorry.
cash offer on the spot.
Right.
URBCHicago.com is the area's oldest
Sorry,
direct
honey.
buyer of real estate. They buy as is, even properties.
Oh, we have
that
Mike from
Florida have
Alaska?
tax liens
Oh.
or building code issues.
Oh yeah.
Stop worrying
I
about
love
bad
it.
tenants.
But yeah,
high
that
payments, or even repairs
Antarctica,
you can't
it's
afford.
been like
If
temperatures
you own a
like
house,
67,
apartment building,
70.
or
You know,
even
but these are things
commercial
we need
real
to
estate
talk
in
about.
rough condition,
Yeah, because that's what I was telling
gives you
them.
a
I'm like,
fast way to sell at a fair
Oh, it's
market
crazy.
I
rate.
never heard of
Call URB Chicago
Antarctica
right
being
now at
that warm.
847-673-7575.
Usually it's like what, below zero, 30
That's
below
It's
zero,
a-
70 below
It's
zero.
a heat wave. You're supposed to, you're not supposed to be able to go outside.
Yeah.
But now, this is where we're melting. And when you look at the Mississippi River, it's been at flood stage for years. And the Mississippi River doesn't look, in reality, what it looks like on the map. It's much bigger.
Yeah.
When you look at what's happened to Lake Michigan,
Yeah.
and we've got land erosion here now. Now, where I live, right up on the lake,
Yeah.
that my stuff could collapse. Could collapse. Now, you know I want to live on the water.
Oh my
But guess what?
God.
I need to move past Halstead, because that's what because the water's reclaiming. My father reminds me of something, an essay I wrote when I was like 8, 7 or 8. He said, I said, you remember that? He said, oh, you remember things that your children say. He said, but what you said was so profound and you were so young. He said, yeah, I just remember turning around and, I said, yeah, looking at me. He said, because I said we were watching the water rush over the breakers. We were almost home, and I said, oh, Daddy, the water's reclaiming its
Individuals
land.
and businesses with tax problems,
And he
listen
looked.
carefully. If
30
you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or
yeah.
have unfiled tax returns,
And I wrote it in it. I wrote it in a little, because I always love to read and things like that. And he said it was just such a, it was so true, but I had no one had articulated it. But you know, things go back to front.
Yeah, but we do need to talk about it.
I think we do. I think we do. I think we do, girl. Why is Illinois?
WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, taking your calls about politics today. 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Will you be watching the debate tonight? Will you? What do you expect to hear? Everybody's saying that there will be a pile-on on Bernie Sanders. What do you think? Do you think he'll be able to handle it? He's known to be a great debater, everybody. So what about Elizabeth Warren? She takes no prisoners either. It's going to be interesting. But you know what's interesting? Everyone's waiting for South Carolina. Why are they waiting on South Carolina? Because South Carolina is supposed to be the black primary. You've had Iowa, you've had New Hampshire, you've had Nevada, which got to be more rainbow. 19% Hispanic, 13% African American, 4% Asian. So you got more of a sense of the diversity of America, and working class, heavily unionized. Well, when you get to South Carolina, it's going to get even blacker, if you will. More than 60% of the voters in the Democratic primary will be black. And they have 1 million registered black voters in the state. 80% of blacks who are eligible to be registered to vote are registered. Interesting. And when we go south, and many of us are going back south because it's less affordable in the north. I mean, just there's so many reasons. Culturally, we're very southern. There's just a lot going on. So I said, okay, let me bring two of the brightest minds I know to respond to this article. And I had Edward McClelland on, and in fact, we're going to have him on again from Chicago Magazine, who wrote this article in 2018. Why Illinois is the Mecca of black political power. And I think we need to look at that because not just because Illinois' um, primary is coming up on March 17th, my mother's birthday, St. Patrick's Day, but because the black vote is at the center of Democratic politics. You can't become the nominee and you can't become president without the black vote. That's just real. So, according to this article, Illinois has sent more African Americans to Congress, 18, and that was 19, than any other state, and the count isn't even close. It isn't even close. 3 black senators, 19 people in the lower house, and produced the first and only African American president. But the political organizing here, just second to none. So let us talk with Dr. Robert Starks, Professor Emeritus, Northeastern Illinois University, and Dwight McKee, who's been one of the organizers in it. Dwight is young, but he started organizing when he was about 15 or 16 years of age. Welcome to the show, Dwight McKee and Dr. Bob Starks. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning, Bob. Good morning. I'm to hear you on the radio, and I know you're out there on the streets doing your organizing.
Oh,
thank McGee and Santita Jackson.
Well, thank God for you. Illinois, the Mecca of black political power. This is an argument that you have been pushing for decades, Dr. Starks. Why?
Well, Chicago, as the article pointed out, is the Mecca of black politics in this country. And the reason is that you have all of these African Americans coming from southern regions in the country to Chicago and really having a great deal of talent, a great deal of motivation, and willing to organize and work together in the civil rights movement and in the cultural movement. But the thing that really is most important to understand is that Chicago's black community has not only a political motivation, but cultural motivation. You realize, of course, jazz, which came from New Orleans, got its real big push in Chicago. When you look at blues started in Chicago. Go right down the line. Gospel, all of these cultural phenomena that are now branded American had many of their roots and many of their big starts in Chicago. So you can't dismiss all of that phenomenon in the political process. Secondly, Chicago, up until basically 2000, had the largest African-American business group in the country. Now I think someone has suggested that Atlanta might have the largest number of African-American business owners. But the point is that that cultural group, that business group came together along with activists and pushed for political power, and that's what made it successful.
Let's go back to Oscar DePriest. Who was he?
Oscar DePriest, again, a man from the South. He was from Alabama, came to Chicago just before the 1892 World's Fair, stayed during the World's Fair, and shortly afterwards decided that he wanted to go into politics. And he was, of course, a big Republican, and in 1915, he became the first African-American alderman in the Chicago City Council. And in 1928, after the white congressman died in the first congressional district, he ran and became the first African-American elected to the Congress outside of the South. So and he was quite a guy. He was, a decorator, a real estate man, and it is said that in the 1919 riot in Chicago, he took trucks and postal vehicles and put African Americans in them and ran through the riot zones in 1919. He was quite a guy.
What is it about Chicago that what else pushed us to organize, pushed the black community to organize? And I'm going to, after I speak with you, Dr. Starks, I would like Dwight to pick up on that, because he started organizing as a young high school student leader in the 60s. But Dr. Starks, what is it about Chicago? I mean, I'm going by off of this anecdote, a story that I got from Reverend Jackson, from my father. As he was moving toward working for Dr. King, of course, always had difficulties trying to raise money for his staff. And he was very dispirited when he came here, because he just could not raise any money. So Reverend had gathered all of these black businessmen whom you've spoken of. And he said, Doc, I just need you to come with me. Just come. And he was like, hey, Jesse, here you go again. Okay, I'll go with you. George Johnson, John Johnson, all of these people. And they raised more than $35,000. Reverend had organized that, which is part of the reason that Dr. King hired him, because he saw, this 23, 24-year-old kid who's doing all this organizing. What is it about Chicago and these Chicago business persons and this Ida B. Wells, all of these people who were just so activist and who were so active, Dr. Starks?
Well, again, Harold Washington would never have become the mayor of the city of Chicago had he not had the business community behind him. So you're absolutely correct. It was Reverend Jackson and the business community that cooperated in the early 60s to make sure that we had, an active political community in Chicago. The other thing, of course, is looking at Lamel. Lamel is carrying on a tradition that goes all the way back to the beginning of the 20th century. Young people being active in politics, pushing, moving, and then going into politics formally, i.e. being elected to office. That has been a tradition for, more than 100 years in this city. And I think the motivation has been that people, young people in particular, have looked around and have seen the condition of African Americans in the city and have come to the conclusion that they can do something about it politically, and they have absolutely jumped in and tried to do something about it. I am very much impressed by people like Lamel, and I just wish we had 1,000 Lamels in the city, because it would make a great deal of difference. And lastly, that is the core of the Reverend Jackson's movement in 1984 and in 1980. It was the young people who supported him and helped him do such an excellent job in the presidential campaigns in 1984 and 1988.
Well, you and the organizing in 1964, which is where we met up with 65, 66, which is where Reverend met up with you, Dwight McKee. So, Dwight, why did you feel compelled to get involved in politics? I mean, because you're part of the wave of the Fred Hamptons. People have to remember that the Black Panthers were a political party. Dwight, help me out.
Well, it was the spirit of the times. It was a time when we were transitioning into self-identity and self-definition. And so most of the many kids in my generation went through metamorphosis where they had to, for the first time in their lives, begin to define themselves on the other side of pop culture, on the other side of traditional black culture. They impose a new definition of themselves. I want to add a couple of pieces of Bob's analysis, though, Santita. The two things that really put us in play, the black community, one was segregation and the other was the railroads. is that what segregation created, because we were locked in, created the largest continuous group of black people outside of Brazil and outside of Nigeria in the world. And so what you had was unimpeded markets. You had a situation where, because all the blacks lived together and were locked in together, is that you could create businesses that would be self-sustaining without the burden of distribution. So you could literally build a company like Ebony or like Jet by selling them, a $1 million company, by selling them on the subways. Or you could build a company like Soft Sheen by selling them, as Ed Gardner did, out of his garage. Because you had 1 million, 1.5 million black people that you could sell to without having to go through distribution channels, without needing major trucks and major systems of transportation to get them the product. So you could literally build $1 million business with just the Chicago market. Secondly, the railroads is that when Stephen Douglas negotiated the railroad deals, it put the trains right in the backyards of his house. And because of that, the blacks from the South would come straight up here from the South and get employed immediately. They could work at the stockyards. They became the Pullman porters, which was the first really middle-class neighborhood. George Pullman pulled blacks right out of slavery, right from the house. He had a policy where he would only use house Negroes because they already were exposed to white people and white people's appetites. And so he pulled a whole class of blacks here that became the Pullman porters, who then, because they were more sophisticated than most, organized the first black unions and organized the precursor to the civil rights movement. And a lot of the black political base came out of the crux of those movements. And so for us, segregation was a plus because there were unimpeded markets, and white people, because they didn't understand the culture, as Bob said, and didn't understand the needs, could not compete with black manufacturers. White people until the 70s and the 80s didn't understand the value of the black hair market. They didn't understand the value of the black fashion industry. It was only into integration that where they exposed and realized that there were real markets there and began to compete with black manufacturers.
But then let me ask you, what will then, are we watching the impact of reverse migration at work here as we look at the importance of Super Tuesday? That's another black primary. As we look at what's happening in with the importance of the primary in South Carolina, is that reverse migration at work? Dr. Starks, first you and then you, Dwight.
To some extent, and understand very clearly that African Americans who are returning to the South are primarily returning to urban South as opposed to rural South, and that's interesting because they've been combined, as Ramel says, with other African Americans in those cities to continue their political activity. Now, the other thing that I'm interested in South Carolina in particular, what impact will that black vote have on a Lindsey Graham, who needs to be out of, in my opinion, not your opinion, Santita.
I know we agree, but I hear you. I mean, because he's never won with much more than 55% of the vote, so he's very vulnerable, as is Mitch McConnell, who's at 37% at least as of a few months ago. He's underwater in terms of his popularity.
Well, and you see that what happened in Alabama with the Democrat who won the Senate in that race after Sessions left the Senate. I would wish that something like that would happen in South Carolina, and I'm sure the African American voters in South Carolina are looking with a real strong eye at trying to beat Lindsey Graham in this coming election. Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, Jamie Harrison is proving to be a strong candidate, and from every day he's going from strength to strength. What do you think is going to? Do you think he has a very, very good shot? And would you think the campaign needs to become a national campaign, like Harold Washington's campaign became a national campaign? It became about more than Chicago for everybody. I remember Judge Marion Perkins was pledging me at Howard University, Delta Sigma Theta. Thank you very much. And in Marion, Judge Perkins, every time she went up and down the line, those of us who were from Chicago, I'm putting her on blast today. All she wanted to know from you, did you get your absentee ballot in? Pyramid. That's all she wanted to know.
In Harold Washington's election, it happened in your dad's election in '84 and '88. The same thing. Exactly.
Where is you? Have you registered? And wait a minute, have you gotten in? You can FedEx. Now, mind you, we're in college. You don't have any money. She said, I don't care. If you want to cross these burning sands, you are going to get. Harold needs our votes now. Pyramid. Dwight McKee.
Yes, what's the question?
Well, my question is, do you think that reverse migration, just going forward, because more and more African Americans, we've lost more than 300,000 in the city of Chicago. Because when we looked at hypersegregation and this concentration of black people in Chicago, that was a source of political power. But now we're leaving. We can't afford to live here, but we are moving south. Do you think that political power will be replenished in the South?
I think it can be. I think that Marion had the right idea is people have to first register to vote. So in a lot of these states with 1 million black people, only 30, 40, 50% of them are even registered to vote. So it's not the moving, it's the sophistication with the people who move that will make the difference. I think Bob asked the key question is you have to also look at the negative impact that some of these voters can have on some of these staunch Republicans who have declared themselves pretty much our arch enemy, that they have capacity to get them out of office and to change the whole landscape of national politics and put us back in control of the Senate and back in control of the House of Representatives and to take over some of the gubernatorial seats. But again, it comes with sophistication and not just mobility. We have to understand the value we bring and the need for us to impose that value in the political process.
But why is that? Because what do they say? We're not the most populous. I mean, how does that work? What are we doing in Illinois that can be replicated all over the country where we are, of course?
Or can I let you in on a little secret?
Just between us.
Most of the black elected officials in Chicago were women.
Wait a minute, say that one more time. Wait, hold on. I need you to say that louder. Louder? Yeah. Louder.
Women. Preckwinkle County, Lightfoot City, two of the...
Lieutenant Governor.
One from Lieutenant Governor. Go down the list. Judges.
Alderwomen. Mine, Leslie Hairston. Yes.
That's right. So, yeah. And of course, that was the major factor in the Democrats winning in Alabama 2 years ago. So, yeah, if you have these young people combined with a strong women's vote, because women vote at a higher rate than men, unfortunately, but that's the case. So if you have that kind of combination with the real motivation and the real need to register, not only to register, but to get out and vote, you know, it's really sad that after Harold Washington passed away, every election since has not, for the city, has not come more than, 35, 40% turnout. That's incredible. Now, we had a higher turnout in the presidential election for Mr. Obama, but for the local elections, we've had very low turnout. So we've got to do something to make sure that turnout is heightened. Lastly, our girl in Naperville, the congresswoman, is having a really rough ride.
Lauren Underwood.
That's right. I think they have, 8 people running against her. And that's a plus, because the more people you have, you can divvy up the vote. But we need to make sure that the people in that area, in her congressional district, support her at a really strong rate, because she is an excellent young congresswoman who's been doing some very good work.
And who won in a white district, and it's possible. Dwight, I've got the final minute. It belongs to you.
It's also the unspoken part of this is that we were also useful to the ethnics in Chicago who had compete with us for our votes. Is that the Irish never had a plurality. They needed us in order for them to maintain control. The Jews never had a plurality. They needed to partner with us to maintain control. The Polish never had a plurality. So as they competed with each other, they needed us as the margin for victory, and it put us in a very unique position to leverage. Most of the early black politicians came out of Catholic schools because they met the Irish guys in high school, or the St. Mel's or the Mount Carmels, developed relationships with them, and then ran them for office as surrogates for their communities and their constituencies. And so the unspoken part of this is how useful we were as a community to the ethnics, who in many ways, in many cases, was the power brokers and some of the money sources and the folk who was in kind of real control of the politics of our community, even though symbolically we had the seats.
You know, everybody.
The case with the Irish, because as Dwight says, they were low in terms of population, but they tried to maintain control over the political apparatus in Chicago and Springfield.
Well, you know, we can see from our role here that coalition politics, that is what works, and we have been doing it in Chicago for more than a century, and boy, oh boy, that is how we're all going to make it together, white, black, brown, yellow, and red. I want to thank you so much, Dr. Bob Starks. No one knows more about politics than the professor emeritus from Northeastern Illinois University, Bob Starks, who I've known forever, and I thank him for all of his tutorials down through the years. He always comes to you with facts. Lady B, he's just data man. And of course, Dwight McKay, part of the family here on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. We're going to be grading the media in just a minute. Are they being fair? Not just to a candidate, but to the progressive positions. I want you to grade the media. I want you to call me at 773-763-WCPT. Let's talk about it here on the Santita Jackson Show. Santita Jackson and friends on Facebook. Back in just a minute.
Say goodbye to those annoying parking lot scratches with a paint repair
Boom.
at Mecca.
Told you, girl. I'm gonna get you to the line now.
Huh?
I'm gonna get you to the line when I'm watching.
Better get Mecca.
I'll try and get you there. Oh boy, I love them. Aren't they great?
Yes,
yes. India has been speaking publicly about a wide range of subjects.
Great.
The coronavirus.
We think we're in very
Great.
good shape in the United States. We've
Dwight is
essentially
great.
closed the borders to areas where we had to
You know
close
what?
them.
Ask him
And
if he
we
wants
have
to
very
stay over
few-
and grade the
The
media,
White House
but
has
let
sent
Dr.
lawmakers
Starks
an
go
urgent
first.
plan to address the
Let
deadly
Dr.
coronavirus
Starks go,
outbreak.
because he's got to go
The threat
teach.
to the global
You got to
economy
teach this morning.
because of the virus is
So
rocking
I was kind of
financial
catching him.
markets. The Dow lost more than 1,000 points yesterday. The president is
Hey,
talking about
Dwight,
that
you
and
wanna
the
hang
election.
on for a
Frankly,
little
until
bit?
the election is
Because we're
over,
grading
our
the media,
market
if he wants.
is
Okay, 'cause
phenomenal,
we're grading
but our
the
market
media.
will jump thousands and thousands
Okay.
of points if I win. If I don't
said
win, you're
yes,
gonna see a
that's
price
okay.
like you've
Of
never
course.
seen before. I really mean it too.
Yes,
Mike
yes,
Rossi on the Wall Street tumble
yes.
yesterday.
Concerns about the coronavirus threat to the global economy sent the financial markets into a plunge Monday. At the
Okay,
closing
this
bell,
was-
the Dow
this
Jones
was
Industrial
praise the
Average
Lord.
had lost
Moving today,
1,031 points, or
got
3.6%.
that over here.
Mark Cameron is senior economic analyst with Bankrate.com.
Investors are concerned
Okay,
that this
so
might
you
be
know
moving
what? We're gonna
beyond the
get off the air
containment
pretty
phase.
quick. Hey everybody, how's it going? Call me at 7. Why don't you all call me sometime? At least Daphne came out to our Let's Talk About It with Santita, Jackson, and Friends last night. I was like, she was like, I'm Daphne. We were so happy to see you. And Diane, really, I hope you had a great time. And you know, we're going to organize more. I want you to bring, each one bring one.
Yeah.
Because I think Daphne and Diane did have a good time. That's what you all told us about, you know, as we got a chance to talk, because that means a lot. You know, because you see how passionate people are. Because you know, it does come down to how we feel about issues and candidates, and there's just so much that goes into the vote. And so, please, while you're here, like and share, like and share, like and share. And when you are at, well, please go over to the YouTube page, the Santita Jackson Show, and like and subscribe. Even if you don't stay over there, please, 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 like and subscribe. The sooner you do, we're going to be able to get some sponsors. I got an idea for a couple of sponsors for Monday. Mr. Sharif gave them to me yesterday. Didn't you like that? Even though there was a mistake on the banner. Nice banners, huh?
Oh my God, I love
I
them.
mean, and they're just, it's like it was just,
Yeah, it's just one little simple thing though. But otherwise, it was great.
you might have to do a little something.
They and first
Maybe
responders
do a
were
little
able to get him out of the
calligraphy
water
on
back
it.
onto shore into a
Santita
hospital.
Jackson.
No
And
word
write
yet
that
on
up
his
there.
condition.
Right.
I'm Rita Foley.
Maybe in a gold,
News.
like a gold paint.
This is 8:20 a.m. WCPT
All is
Willow
not lost, you have to
Springs,
just
and
think.
streaming
Yeah.
worldwide at
It's
WCPT820.com.
they're nice. I love
We are
them.
Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now your WCPT 820
You did a
Chicago
fabulous
traffic
job.
update.
Oh yeah.
In Schiller
Well,
Park,
there was
Irving Park Road
Omar,
is blocked.
Mr.
in
Sharif.
Old River Road
He's
at
the one who
25th
said, look,
Avenue
let's get
due to a
these banners,
major
'cause this
incident
needs to look
involving a
Yeah.
another
pedestrian.
way.
Inbound
That's why I
miles
want
an hour traffic
that
is
omnidirectional
jammed.
mic.
390
I'm gonna go in and
Madison
order it
Road is
today.
wrecked. Two left lanes
And
are
that way we
blocked.
can get it,
Multiple vehicles.
and we'll have that
50
next
minutes,
week.
390 to downtown,
So that
outbound
we can just
32.
start doing it
Illinois
that way.
runs 19 minutes late
Right.
to Montreal.
Right.
Kennedy, 32 minutes O'Hare to downtown.
Because there was one that you saw that,
Stevenson is a 45
well,
minute
we'll
trip
talk
from
about that.
355 to Lake
Okay, everybody, so
George.
please,
Ryan,
everybody,
41
come
minutes
on
to
and like
Don
and share. We're going to be grading the media with Jim Narakis of fairness and accuracy in reporting. And I want to know what you think. Do you think the media are being fair to, are they being fair to the progressives? Are they favoring the progressives, or are they pushing back against the progressives? Are they favoring the moderates? I think that they are. Absolutely. MSNBC, even though they are liberal, they're not progressive. And I think it's important for us to note that. You need to understand, in media, you have no friends. How about that? You have no friends, and you just need to understand that you are a consumer, and you need to make some demands, have some requirements of these folks who give you your information.
Remember, Big Lou's like you. He's on meds too.
30
Happening
seconds.
across the nation right now. ADP is helping Party City stores streamline recruiting. Music houses like Squeaky Clean Studios are demoing tracks while ADP helps keep business on track. And fun, ADP helps a small Mexican restaurant keep up with compliance demands. When ADP helps businesses achieve what they're working for, that's newsworthy. HR talent, time, benefits, and payroll, informed by data and designed for people. Learn more at design.adp.com.
This is WCPT 820, where facts matter. Wake up, Chicago. This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, 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 everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Lady B, we're having a good time today.
Yes, yes, yes.
If you don't get in that microphone, girl, I mean, what am I going to do? Nothing but ask you to get in the microphone like I do every day. We're talking about grading the media. What do you think? Because we're going to have a debate tonight. And so we're not going to have a debate party, everybody. I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. But you know what? I want you to comment. Well, don't be surprised. I might just say I might do it because I am like spontaneous like that, kind of, sort of. But because I'm trying to pack to get to South Carolina, also. But we need to grade the media, and I think you need to tonight in particular because you're gonna have the media who will be asking questions of the candidates. Pay attention to the commercials. Mm-hmm. Who's sponsoring the debate? Who sponsors the network that the debate is going to be on? That shapes a lot. So we're going to talk with Jim Narakis from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting about how different candidates are being reported. You know, what their narratives are. And of course, Dwight McKee stayed around with us. Thank you for that. Had to let Dr. Bob Starks go, from Professor Emeritus from Northeastern Illinois University, because guess what, Lady B?
Class.
He's got to teach class today. But we're going to be talking about this grading the debate, grading the media. You need to do that because the media host the debates. There's some questions that they don't even touch in these debates. Really. And some directions in which they will not go. So call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. These are the questions you need to be asking. I mean, how will they, if Mike Bloomberg is doing $500 million worth of ad buys, how is he shaping the conversation? He is already a media mogul. Mm-hmm. The Bloomberg News organization is huge and very influential. How is he shaping the conversation? Think about that. Think about it. All right, everybody, we're dedicating our show today to Katherine Johnson, NASA mathematician portrayed in Hidden Figures, indeed one of the pioneering women in aeronautics, one of the pioneering African Americans in aeronautics, one of the pioneering African American women in aeronautics. Brilliant mathematician. She was known as a human computer. And so we thank God for the work that she did at NASA, and they finally recognized her, one of the hidden figures from NASA. From the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, NACA, that's what it was known as at that time, and it became NASA in 1958. And guess what? Little trivia. Turns out she was my grandmama's neighbor. My grandmother and grandfather down in Hampton, Virginia. They lived on the same street on Mimosa Crescent. Mm-hmm. Unbelievable. Wow. She was also known for verifying the calculations by the NASA computer. She had to check the computer for John Glenn's mission into orbit. That was not historical license that they took in that movie. That actually happened. John Glenn said, check with Mrs. Johnson. If she says it's okay, I'm going. I can finish. I will have confidence. If she doesn't, if she thinks that this calculation is off, I will not feel good about this. Ooh, everybody. Bloomberg. Called Elizabeth Warren scary. He knocked President Obama's first term. This is leaked audio, everybody. Well, it turns out, though, that he is, according to these headlines, preparing a media onslaught against not President Trump, not against the Republicans, against the Democratic front runner. Everybody. I thought he said he was trying to defeat Trump.
Thank you.
Okay, so just you let me know about that. That is from that's from CNBC. His campaign, according to this headline, a presidential campaign plans to unleash its cash flush media operation against Bernie Sanders in the wake of the Vermont senator's resounding victory in the Nevada caucuses. The campaign, which has already spent $500 million, $500 million on media ad buys, plans a multi-pronged attack, including the publication of opposition research on Sanders, the sources added. Now, some people pushing back against the Vermont senator, the front runner for the Democratic nomination. At least 3 races in, he's the front runner. And they say he's not a Democrat, but guess what? Neither is Mr. Bloomberg.
Right.
And Mr. Trump isn't a Republican. These folks are floated between parties. I'm just saying. The coronavirus has, people are fearful all over the world. Health experts are warning that the world is approaching a tipping point in the spread of this coronavirus as outbreaks erupt in Italy and Iran, and we saw it in our own stock market. The blue chip Dow, everybody, plunged 1,031 points yesterday, losing 3.6% of its value. What do you think about that, everybody? What do you think about that? And Harvey Weinstein was found guilty yesterday, and he is facing charges in Los Angeles, facing up to 25 years in prison after his verdict. After the verdict was reached in New York. Namaste, Trump, according to The Guardian. That is, India has welcomed U.S. President Donald Trump at a 125,000-strong rally yesterday. Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, is kind of like President Trump's twin. He's a populist, and he also just pushed a law that pushes back against equality for Muslims in India. Isn't that interesting? Well, we'll see how all of this works out, everybody. The Chicago Bulls tonight will be facing the Thunder. The Blackhawks will be facing the Blues. As I shared with you, the stocks were down yesterday. Dow was down 1,031 points. S&P was down 111 points. NASDAQ down 355 points. Many people are saying that it's on the strength of the fear of the coronavirus and what it will do to trade all around the world. Remember, Wuhan, China, is a city of 11 million people that has been quarantined. You can't even imagine that. That's a city that's 5 times the size of Chicago. 1.5 times the size of New York. Unbelievable. We're expecting a snowstorm, everybody, tonight at 6 o'clock. It's supposed to be on and cracking here in Chicago. A high of 37 degrees today, but by that time, the temperatures will be falling. We could get 7 inches, maybe even a foot. We'll see. All right, everybody, let's talk about the media. Let's grade them. According to this 2019 report, MSNBC programs found that, this analysis of MSNBC programs found that Senator Sanders received the least and most negative coverage of the top 20 Democrats in advance of his presidential run. MSNBC's Chris Matthews suggested that 4 more years of Trump might be better for the Democratic Party than Sanders winning the White House. The American media elite, according to The Guardian headline, has learned nothing from 2016. It will only get worse. And MSNBC, the most influential network among liberals, according to In These Times, and it's ignoring Bernie Sanders. On and on and on and on. Let's grade the media. Let's see who they are, what kind of questions they're asking, and are they asking the questions that speak to your needs? Really, I mean, are they, let's talk about it. So, welcoming, of course, we've had Dwight McKee on the show. I'm so glad that you're still here, great social scientist. And we are talking with Jim Narakis, one of the most brilliant, really, he's a student of the media. And he analyzes all of this for us, fairness and accuracy in reporting. Fairness and accuracy in reporting. Go to fair.org, everybody, so that you can find out just exactly what's happening. Jim Narakis, how are you?
Very well.
Okay, we've got this debate tonight. What should we expect from the mainstream media? What kind of questions do you think they're going to be asking?
Well, we've been watching the debate questions closely. To us, that's the most interesting part of it, is how are the media moderators framing the issues? What issues are they focusing on? And how are they presenting them? Healthcare has been a major issue in the debates, brought up again and again, and almost always it's brought up from the right. The question is always framed in, can you afford the price tag for Medicare for all. Isn't this too risky? Aren't people afraid of giving up their for-profit health insurance? And there are legitimate questions to ask about Medicare for all, but there's also questions to be asked about the current system or public option, which is presented as a kind of compromise. And those questions are never asked. The flaws in the current system, the problems of not changing, are never brought up as if they might be something that you need to talk about or address, as if the only risk is in Medicare for all system, and that's setting the agenda in a way. It's telling you what choice you should make in the guise of asking questions of just holding a debate.
So let me ask you this: what should you expect of? Okay, Mike Bloomberg. He's a very interesting figure. He is a media mogul. He's one of the wealthiest human beings on earth, but he's a media mogul. He owns Bloomberg News, very influential, a substantial news service, and he is running for president, and now he's using his resources to go after Bernie Sanders. I mean, shooting inside the tent. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's worth noting that the hundreds of millions of dollars that he has spent so far, and he's prepared to spend hundreds of millions of dollars more, this is a sizable profit center for the corporate media. This is money that is most of it is going into the pockets of the people who are covering the campaign. And that's something that they are very aware of. They know that it would be that they would see it in their quarterly profit reports if Mike Bloomberg were to say, I'm hanging it up. I'm not going to pursue the nomination anymore. You would notice it. It would probably affect their stock. So there is a real incentive they have to present Mike Bloomberg as a legitimate candidate, as someone who has a real shot at getting the nomination. And the pitch that's being made both by the Bloomberg campaign and by media supposed observers is that Michael Bloomberg is the safe. If you're hoping to defeat Donald Trump, Mike Bloomberg is the way to go. And this was laid out in there's an op-ed in CNN that called on. It was written by Joe Lockhart, the former press secretary for Bill Clinton, and it called on Mike Bloomberg to go negative on Sanders and take him out of the race. And the justification for this is that this would be the safe thing to do. Like, it's too risky to nominate Bernie Sanders. And you have to ask yourself, in what world does a recently Republican billionaire buy his way into the nomination by having a scorched earth attack on the front runner, manage to knock that front runner out, and still have a functioning coalition that is going to go into the November election victorious? I think that is really kind of a fantastic premise, to think that the coalition behind Bernie Sanders, which we've seen from Nevada, is extremely broad coalition, multiracial, multi-generational, men, women. He has built this movement that has established him as the front runner, and the idea is that you could spend hundreds of $millions on negative advertising, take him down, and not have people resentful of the fact that you've done that to their candidates, and they're going to go in November and cast their ballot for Mike Bloomberg. And this is the safe option. This is the sensible thing to do. If you want to, do the safe thing, this is what you should do. That's the Bloomberg premise and the media premise.
How is that supposed to work? And who in the media is supposed to ask questions about that? Who in the media will ask Mike Bloomberg on a big platform, why are you spending money to go after the front runner? I mean, because these are the same people who say we need unity, that we need to come together. Please explain that to me, Jim.
Yeah, that is the thing that is hard to get your mind around. And I guess the way to think about it is that the pundits who speak on behalf of the Democratic Party in the media are not primarily interested in victory so much as they are in maintaining their hold on the party. They represent a Democratic establishment that has benefited from a particular set of policies that benefit wealthy donors, and it's a very, very tight-knit, self-supportive community that benefits from the status quo. And as Chris Matthews said, he said that maybe we'd be better off with 4 years of Trump. I think that does speak for a lot of people in the elite of the Democratic Party, that it's better to lose to Trump than win with a person who is upsetting the status quo, who is going to do things in a different way that may not be so profitable to the people who are profiting right now.
Dwight McKee, who are these people? Who are the mainstream media? I mean, who are they?
People with jobs, in families, in mortgages, and house notes, who take vacations and have to pay for their kids to go to school. They're people with jobs. Media is a job. It is a occupation that people go to school to have to pay for. And so it's in their vested interest to secure themselves in their jobs, whatever that takes, whatever that means. Some dynamics work better for them for their employment, and some dynamics work against their long-range employment. Just like he just talked about the DNC. The DNC are people with jobs that are trying to hold on to their jobs. And so when there's a change of control at the top, then they become jeopardized. Whatever their role is becomes jeopardized. Then they become unemployed. So they have to, it's in their vested interest to maintain the status quo or to stir the pot. It is in their long-range interest, not the people's interest necessarily, but their independent individual interest to be able to secure their positions. And so I think that we have to take the mystique out of the media and see it for what it is, which are people with jobs that are trying to hold on to those jobs or get advancement in those jobs.
Well, I hear you. I mean, but Jim, and Jim, following on that point, I'm wondering, are the media, are they paying attention to the fact that more and more people do not trust them? That is the mainstream media. Have they picked up on that?
Yeah, I mean, it is a real issue, but you have to remember that for the corporate media, their customer is the advertiser, and the audience is the product. This is entirely true for television, and mostly true for newspapers, magazines.
Well, please explain what that means. What does that mean to us?
Our income comes from the people who are buying the commercials. and what they're selling to those advertisers is access to you and me, the audience. So we are the product, and they are the customers. And so the first thing that media need to do is satisfy the customers, but they need to have a continued stream of product as well. They need to keep our eyeballs, and so it is a tension between serving the needs of the advertisers and continuing to hold the attention of the audience. But when push comes to shove, the people who are writing the checks are going to come first, and they do have particular interest beyond just getting our eyeballs. The advertisers do have things that they need. If you watch TV news, you'll notice that there's a ton of ads for medicine, for healthcare products. These are one of the primary sponsors of the news in particular, and so they obviously want people to see their ads about their medicine, but they also want the programs that these ads are embedded in not to be encouraging people to be questioning of the medical profession, the pharmaceutical profession industry, and they certainly don't want people talking about how we could save a lot more money if we had, the government was buying all of the medicines and keeping the drug industry from price gouging. That's certainly not the lesson that the drug industry wants people to be learning from watching the news. And I think it does have an impact on how issues are framed, and what information that we have going into an election to make choices. Our choices are limited by the fact that the institution that we depend on to inform us has a best interest in limiting that information.
We're talking Jim Narekas of Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. Grading the media. We've got a debate tonight. Will you be watching? And in just after this conversation, I want to know tomorrow what your grade of the media is going to be. Do you know who the questioners are? I mean, Dwight, do you think I've got less than 2 minutes here. Do you think we really pay attention to the persons and the agenda behind the questions?
Well, I think Jim hit on a key point, is that the root word of media is medium. That is, they are the in-between the advertiser and the audience. Mm-hmm. People think that commercials are made for TV shows, but the fact of the matter, TV shows are made for commercials. The role of a TV show is to deliver the audience to the advertiser. And so when you, early in the morning for years and years and years, from about 9 o'clock till about 12 o'clock, you could on any channel you saw what they call soap operas. Mm. Well, they call soap operas because the purpose of the show was to sell soap. They were sponsored by Ivy and Palmolive and the soap companies, and thusly they were called soap operas. I think that we think that the media is much more objective than they actually are. And so, to answer your question, who will be asking the questions? That's only part of it. The other part of it is, why are they asking those questions?
Hold that thought. I want you and Jim to speak to that on the other side, because I think that we need to understand that. You've got a front runner who's being vilified, and you have people who are struggling to become front runners who are being declared front runners in waiting. All you have to do is wait. And what bombs will Bloomberg drop? And why is he going after the Democratic front runner? Back in a minute. I might get you up to the line like at 29. I mean at 59. But trust me, if my eyes there, I'm gonna get you there.
Road is closed
as you can hear. I mean, I might
Avenue and Old River Road
get you.
involving a pedestrian. Kennedy delays started.
Well, I'm accustomed to that. You know, just boom. Okay.
Yeah.
Now in the express.
Because I'm looking at this clock. I don't look at that.
I'm looking. Now, which one is more accurate?
That's what I'm trying to see if they're in sync.
Okay.
From 390 to Addison Road, direct blocking 2 left lanes. 48 minutes, 390.
Okay, let me see. 30, let's just do 30, 48, 49, 50, 1, 52, 53, 54, 50, okay. All right, so, all right.
Out Chicago.
Illinois raked in $3.2 million the first day of legal recreational cannabis sales. Do we know exactly where it's coming from?
Daphne's started out. Daphne's Chai, when she's in prison,
I told you. Daphne clicking around, click, click, click. But in person, you don't want to say anything. I am not mad at you, but Diane was bringing it. It was a great, I enjoyed the conversation last night. So everybody, please go to Santita Jackson and Friends so you can see Daphne last night and her friend Diane, who Brownlee. They were all great. But we had a wonderful conversation, and a lot of you tuned in. And please like and share, and like and share here, like and share on the Santita Jackson and Friends page, and like and share, like and subscribe over on our YouTube page. Please run over there real quick and subscribe. The Santita Jackson Show, the Santita Jackson Show. Alrighty, dighty. How many of you are going to be watching the debate tonight? Let me know. Are you going to watch the debate, Lady B?
If you own a house, apartment building, or even commercial real estate in rough condition, URBChicago.com gives you a fast way to sell at a fair market value. Call URB Chicago right now at 847-673-7575.
What channel's going to be on?
I don't know.
847-673-7575. Or visit URBChicago.com.
My father's already down there, of course.
This is Lewis Carter from GWC Injury Lawyer. Now that cannabis is legal in Illinois, an understanding of the law and the risks associated with ingesting cannabis is critically important. Under the Cannabis Act, you can legally ingest marijuana only in a very limited number of places. Not in public, not on government or school premises, and not even in your own condo or apartment if your landlord has a no smoking policy. A positive test is potentially lethal to your rights in 3 key areas: employment, work injuries, and driving. So if your employer has a zero-tolerance drug and alcohol policy, you can be terminated if you fail a drug test, even though your cannabis consumption was legal. If you're hurt on the job and test positive for cannabis, the legal presumption is that your accident was caused in part because of the cannabis, and your workers' compensation rights can be totally denied. DUI laws have not changed. Impaired means impaired.
Okay.
And a DUI due to cannabis or alcohol can ruin your career. If you want to indulge in legal THC,
according to the NBC News Marist poll, Biden narrowly leads
It's time for some
Sanders.
straight talk. It's tax refund time, and the big wireless companies play a game where they lure you in with a phone deal that locks you into a pricey contract. Don't play. With Straight Talk Wireless, get a Samsung Galaxy A10e for just $99, all on America's best networks for up to half the cost. No contract. Make that tax time money win all year long. Straight Talk Wireless only at Walmart.
Savings may vary. See straighttalk.com.
You're listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, taking your calls at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. And we're also taking your text messages over there too. Thank you, GWC Injury Lawyers. We want to hear from you, as we're hearing from you on Facebook, on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Please, please, please like and share, and go back to just a few hours ago. It was just a few hours ago, Lady B, like 12 hours ago. We were having a debate about the debate and about democratic politics, and really about what America is needing and looking for right now. As we move into the South Carolina primary, we've had Iowa, we've had New Hampshire, we've had Nevada. Now we have got South Carolina. And just behind that, we're going to have Super Tuesday.
Yep.
I mean, it just keeps rolling along. But as we're watching these debates, that's why we brought on Jim Narekas of Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. I mean, are the media being fair and accurate in their reporting? That is the question. Dwight McKee, who has lived through this before, I think just coming out of the civil rights movement, you saw Dwight McKee, before I go back to you, Jim, how unfairly Dr. King was treated and how the mainstream media actually maligned him and printed false stories that were given to them, about him. Is that not true, Dwight?
That is true. But not only was Dr. King unfairly treated, the Vietnam War was overly fairly treated because, some of the papers and radio stations and TV stations got Pentagon contracts and multi-industrial contracts. So they had to support the war in order to create a margin of profit in their own companies. And so there's a two-edged sword. One is they had to paint Dr. King as the bad guy since he was against the war. And others, they had to create these heroes out of the war so the war could be accepted by the public. And if you remember, it was only until Walter Cronkite turned on them that the media became much more objective about the war. Everybody knew that the numbers were manipulated. You had more people dying than you had people inside of living in the countries, but they wasn't raising questions about that until Walter Cronkite turned on the Pentagon. I think that it's very important to understand that everybody in the horse race has something at stake. There is a vested interest or a motive in everybody in the game. And part of being a responsible citizen is figuring out what their stake is in the game. Jim?
Jim Narekas? What? Well, and that's why I don't have a problem with the comparison. Not comparing them personally. But we're looking at the institutional treatment, the treatment of progressives, of people who advocate for peace and who push back against war. We're looking at those folks who advocate those positions and how they are treated. I am struck by this analysis that shows that primetime MSNBC, as Bernie Sanders was about to launch his campaign, how negatively they portrayed him. But so many callers will tell me, Fox is to the right, and they are. MSNBC is to the left, not quite. Andy Lack, who heads up MSNBC, has not been that fond of progressives, Jim Narekas.
I've had kind of an odd situation in being they're sort of by default the cable channel to the left, and it is something that they have struggled against for years. They did not want to be perceived that way, largely because first of all, they're owned by a giant corporation. They used to be owned by General Electric. Now they're owned by Comcast. Neither of which are even as corporations go, particularly progressive corporations. And they are dependent on advertisers who are not going to write checks to support an anti-corporate network. And that is, if you are genuinely progressive, you're going to be talking about corporate power. There's not a way to avoid talking about the disproportionate power that wealthy corporations have in our society and still be progressive, which means that you can't really be a network sponsored by big business and be progressive. It's a contradiction in terms. And so they have struggled for years in trying to position themselves as, even though they're an alternative to Fox and CNN, but they're not too alternative. You remember their slogan used to be "lean forward," which was a way of saying we don't lean left, we lean forward.
What did that mean? I mean, I'm just trying to, because to me it's been like scrambled eggs. When I asked for it sunny side up, they just mix a whole lot of messages in here. And, to fully disclose, I have been a pundit on Fox News for several years. And, I remember one of the headlines was "Out of Left Field, Santita Jackson goes to Fox News." And I tried to, explain to people, do you know that we don't have any friends in mainstream media? That this is a corporatocracy, and the media, the medium, thank you, Dwight McKee, they support the corporatocracy, they support war. I mean, MSNBC, when it was owned by GE, pulled its #1 show off the air. That was Phil Donahue. Pulled him off the air. Am I not getting this right, Jim?
Is lobbying behind the scenes to get Phil Donahue fired?
Who?
Matthews.
Wait a minute, who just said that if we need to have 4 more years of Trump than have a Bernie Sanders win? Please explain.
Yeah, Chris Matthews was very worried about how he would look if he was on a network where there was someone who was questioning the invasion of Iraq. He thought that would make him look bad, and so
worse than he looks right now. I mean, because this man is completely wigging out, and I'm like, Mr. Matthews, what are you doing? Yes, Dwight.
Yeah, I was going to say, and Jim, you may recall that when GE owned NBC, they were the leading contractors for the war in Vietnam. They made many of the weapon systems that they used in Vietnam. So it was almost an inherent conflict of interest for them. They could study War No More, and if they studied War No More, they'd have to explain it to the stockholders.
The military contractors are big advertisers, especially on the Sunday shows. And like if you're staying at home watching Meet the Press, you're not going to buy a fighter bomber, right? This is not advertising aimed at the audience. It's advertising aimed at the network. The network is saying, keep covering war in a way that makes us money, and we will keep putting advertising on your shows. It's a system in which backs are scratched well, and it works for them. It does not particularly work for the American public. When you see someone from a think tank being brought on to talk about some kind of national security issue.
Oh, stop it. I can't take it. Please explain. It drives me to distraction. Jim.
These think tanks are the think tanks that talk about war issues on corporate media are inevitably funded by the military industry, by weapons makers. And it is their job to be a pretend expert. Not that they don't know a lot about this stuff, but they're not there to make an independent judgment. They're there to explain why the solution to every problem that we have in the world is weapons. that is why the check comes from Boeing to the think tank, and it's understood that the job of the think tank is to sell Boeing weapon systems. And these people are brought on by corporate media as if they're independent experts. They don't say, and this is a person who is, funded by this weapon system. The weapon system that they're saying is that we need to buy. That's where they get their paycheck from. That's not said, because that would spoil the whole deal. Is that the media gets a free expert, the weapons maker gets an advocate for their weapons, the advocate gets a nice house in Georgetown. It works for everyone except for the people who are having the bombs dropped on them.
Look, and the people who are dropping the bombs. Yes, before we go to the callers. Yes, Dwight.
Like that, a caveat to that, Jimmy, you make a great point, is that not just to sell the weapon systems, but to create a need for the weapon system. Part of the punditry in that is create this tension between and create these adversaries so that people feel compelled to have to defend themselves or attack somebody else, or to justify why there's a need to go and drop bombs in somebody who has not necessarily done anything to us. Because before you sell the system, you have to create the need for the system. And that's one of the roles that the pundits and the analysts really play in this thing.
And people you need to know that, and you need to talk about it, and you need to call these media outlets on the carpet, everybody. Because we're about to go into a debate tonight, and a lot of questions that you want to have asked, they're going to let Pete Buttigieg talk about Medicare for all who want it, while you are going into bankruptcy with private insurance. Are you kidding me? I mean, really. Let me just get a couple of these callers in, at least. Maria is always on fire, so everybody put on your hazmats, Jim and Dwight, because she's coming. How you doing, Maria? It's true.
I'm sorry, I'm a little bit under the weather, but I had to come online.
Oh, bless your heart, but take your time and make your point.
Alrighty. When I was a college student, I studied journalism in undergrad and grad school. And I was led to believe that journalism is about the 5 W's: the what, who, where, when, and how. That it was objective when the facts were reported, and the people could make their own decisions, form their own opinions. And they weren't led by the noses, by corporate media that are motivated by profits and politics. Okay? Now, there's very few independent media sources because it's expensive to run a media outlet. And I didn't know this as, a very young student who wanted to go into the journalism field. But the one thing I've noticed over it's been years, I felt like the media has changed. It's not as objective, and this was confirmed by the comments by your guest. Maybe I was just being very naive, but I really truly believe in that. I think everybody has a way to form opinions based on the facts that are presented to them. But I think people become lazy. They prefer to be fed opinions, propaganda, instead of researching, reading, watching numerous media sources, newspapers, TVs, etc. Explore what's out there. Don't just get led by the nose and just hear the same old baloney that is really perpetrated by the agenda of these advertisers or even the corporate media. I mean, I know we lead really busy lives, but we have to be vigilant. We have to stay alert, because we're going to miss things. It's going to affect our lives from here on, okay? If we are not alert, we are not vigilant, and we do not think, really think it through, analyze everything, research everything, and then make your decision, and stick by your decision, then you're an educated, well-informed person. I'm sorry, but I've met many people that have been fed all this. I better wash my mouth.
Thank you.
Okay?
Oh my goodness, she gets excited.
So I'm like, oh! know, I'm glad I did get a journalism background because it makes me think, and I'm also an attorney, so I analyze things. And then I add in my own emotional, all right?
No. I mean, candor that's not your strength. Just kidding. Love you, Maria. Let me grab a couple of callers. And you take care of yourself, because we got to get you out on Monday. Got to get you well. We love you, Maria. My flamenca. That's right. She's waiting for the holidays. She can dress up in one of these outfits again, looking fabulous. Paul from Seattle, what's on your mind?
Good morning. Well, I want to talk about the corporate media and Bernie Sanders as well. And this, there's definitely a collective dementia going on here. Two things is that, last time in 2016, it was, Bernie got cheated, and aftermath was that if Bernie would have only got his due, he probably would have won the election. Now that he seems to be the front runner, oh my God, we can't have this socialist, this communist, Bernie Sanders. And now on his remarks about Cuba, you hear even on MSNBC, as your guest was saying, Chris Matthews and Joe Scarborough saying that you just cannot sing the praises of Fidel Castro in American politics. You must hate Cuba to prove that you're a patriot of this country. Again, you've got to hate somebody who's dead. And no mention of the fact that in Cuba, I think before Fidel Castro, it was a man by the name of Fulgencio Batista that America supported, who was a brutal military dictator who not only killed lots of people in his own country, but there was no literacy, which is why everybody in Cuba was illiterate. And not only that, to this day, the infant mortality rate in the United States of America is 41% higher than in Cuba, and in the United States is the worst, the 50th in infant mortality among the 50 developed Western nations. That's pathetic. At 610 deaths per 100,000 live births, which is terrible. And that might not be the case in Seattle or Chicago or San Francisco, but it is probably a lot worse than 610 in places like the Deep South, where also literacy is pathetic. Thank you, Santita. I appreciate it.
Thank you, because, I have to tell you, because, Paul, my grandmother was a migrant worker who spent a lot of time in Cuba in the 30s. And in the early 40s. And my grandmother, because she was orphaned at 12, had a lot of pain in her life, and she did not talk about her youth, because it was just too painful, and I respected that. But she did say one time, because my brother, who was in Congress at the time, was debating, and it was a very civil debate. They were talking about the fate of Elian Gonzalez. You remember him? And he was debating Gloria Estefan, and he said, she of course felt that Elian should have stayed here away from his dad, and my brother said no, he needs to be returned to his father. And of course she was saying, Castro, awful, and he said, that's really not the point. Everybody's got their issues, but at least Cuba is the most literate nation in the hemisphere. It went from being the least literate, and then I had to remind my brother when he got off the air, I said, you do know that Grandma said that when she was a child in Cuba chopping sugar cane, that we were little more than slaves there. She said, now, you can say whatever you want about Castro. People have a lot of opinions, and to be fair, my grandmother was socially a very conservative woman. She said, but when I was there, we were little more than slaves. And I have to tell you, and Dwight, stay right there, Paul, you knew my grandmother. I'll never forget that moment when she said we were little more than slaves. And
before Fidel Castro, and in the 30s, there was a provisional government, but America liked Cuba in the 30s and the 40s and 50s because that's where Americans could go and gamble, and the proceeds of the gambling went to the very few rich. Nobody, like your grandma, nobody reaped the benefits of the gambling and the partying that went on in Cuba, and the poverty that existed in Cuba since Fidel Castro took over is largely and mostly due to the embargo that the United States put on Cuba, because Fidel Castro was not our tin pot dictator. Batista was our tin pot dictator, and that's the kind of the form that we have around the world. We didn't like Iran, so we reinstalled Mohammad Pahlavi, the Pahlavi dynasty in Iran, the Shah, because he's a dictator.
And the same happened with Saddam Hussein. He was our empire dictator too until we started not liking him.
Well, you know, and you know what? I promise you, we've broken that embargo in Cuba because in 2008 we found that they're going to be joining OPEC. They are one of the 15 largest oil-producing countries. They're about to become that in the world. In the world. So wait a minute, stay right. I think that happened in 2006. The final 2 minutes are going to belong to you, Dwight, and you, Jim. Dwight, 1 minute.
If I may add that the role of the fruit company,
United Fruit Company,
and the Dulles brothers, who own the board of the fruit company, who also ran the CIA and the State Department, and the relationship between the politics of Latin America and the profits of Latin America in behalf of United Fruit. I also have to add that also coming out of those profits in Cuba were Rapapalina cigars, who the money from that, there was Paley's family, and the money from that went to start NBC. And so is the direct correlation between the oppression in Cuba and the media companies, because the money was recycled into starting NBC. I think we have to, the key thing is to be vigilant and do your research. Look and see, there's always two realities, is the one you see and the one you don't see. The one that's running things is the one you don't see. And so we want to make sure that we are vigilant and do real research. I'll give the last minute to Jim.
To bring it back to the debate tonight, listen, when they ask questions about foreign policy, listen for, are they asking this question from a pro-peace perspective, or are they asking it from a pro-war perspective? Are they asking it from a perspective that having friendships with other nations is good, or are they asking from the perspective of making sure we have enough enemies? And I think that you'll find that the media moderators will come down on the side of war, on the side of manufacturing enemies, because that is where the money is. There's not a lot of money in peace.
And Medicare for all who want it, instead of, even though most Americans support it. I mean, you know what, Jim Narekas? Fairness and accuracy in reporting, I thank you for the work that you do day in, day out. We're going to have you back so that we can review this, because I think that the more people know, the better decisions we're all going to make. So tonight, Jim, you said for about 30 more seconds, give it to me. What should we be looking for tonight?
Looking for how the moderators frame the debate. How are they excluding options? How are they ignoring things that should be questioned and are not going to be questioned? And how they are encouraging division and not unity.
Dwight McKee told us, do your research. Don't be that busy. Because you are, last night as we had this passionate debate, Lady B, as you are my witness, as you were sitting on the other side of the camera, people were arguing their points passionately, but you didn't have enough information. I don't know everything at all. Oh, heavens to Bitsy. I don't want to know everything. But I always try to dig down and get some information, because I'm very clear that there's a story behind the story. One day, maybe in the next couple of days, maybe tomorrow, we'll talk about the Blagojevich interview with Anderson Cooper, who I have always loved, but I didn't like that debate. I knew that when they talked, that he'd been kind of slow walked into that interview. It was supposed to be nice, and then it went way left. But you need to know who these people are and why they're pushing against him. You need to know the story behind the story. You deserve that. Don't think that these people are your friends. No, they're not. They work for somebody. They are collecting paychecks. And they are collecting paychecks from people who have an agenda, from corporations that have an agenda that they have agreed to uphold. Need to know that. So tomorrow we're going to be talking about the debate and really the story behind the story. On behalf of me and Lady B, we're out of here. Thank you, Dwight McKee and Jim Narekas of Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. God bless you, everybody. Have a great one.
Say goodbye to those annoying parking lot scratches.
Oh
with a
boy,
paint
they were
repair at
great,
Mecca.
weren't they?
It's easy as book,
Love you,
quote,
love you.
Mecca.
I love you all right here on the Santita. Am I supposed to speak with Roosevelt? Okay.
Yeah,
Well, we're gonna do
Roosevelt.
this. We're gonna do this very quickly because you and I need to meet because I'm out of here at 45 after.
Like you've never seen before.
But does Dwight want to say anything?
So Dwight, I guess, is going to say.
Well, ask him. Ask him. Because I always love that.
As he started
Are you saying for the episode?
Oh, it's only gonna be like 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, it's going to be like.
We're abbreviating it today.
Yeah, it's going to be very short.
Waded right into
About 10 minutes.
fights, re-upping his
Okay.
call for two liberal Supreme Court justices
Lady
to
B.
step aside from cases involving him or his administration.
I just don't know how they
Lady B, who loves you so much.
Yes, yesterday was awesome. It was great. It was so. I love it. It was so. Everything was back and forth.
Yesterday?
Back and forth.
No,
Yesterday.
let's talk about it when we get off the air.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tell him no, because we want to do that. We want to give him some assessment.
Investors are worrying about the
Feel
spread
like
of the
twin.
coronavirus, and it tanked the markets yesterday.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average suffered its biggest drop in 2 years.
Let's bring up
falling
Roosevelt.
down
You ready?
31
All
points,
right.
or 3.6%,
Okay,
and
hold on.
wiping out its gains so far in 2020. The S&P
All
500
right.
took a 3.4% drop, and the Nasdaq fell
I'm ready for
3.7%.
that.
Senior
Okay.
Roosevelt? Hey, sweetie, and we've got Dwight McKee, but I've got to bring you all up. We're saying hello to Roosevelt and to Dwight McKee as we talk about just for a few minutes, about the media, grading the media, understanding the media, knowing who they are. Many of us look at different networks and say they're my friends. Fox, if I'm ideologically to the right, they're my friends. If I'm ideologically to the left, I am going to be with MSNBC. Everybody get over that. CNN, I don't know what they're doing because it's not the same network that Ted Turner, who was very progressive, it's not the same network that he created. That having been said, you need to understand the bigger agenda here so that you can begin to ask questions of these candidates yourself. Because there's some questions that don't even get asked. And you need to understand the agenda that's driving the questions that are being asked. Roosevelt, your comment today.
Well, I wanted to add a little bit about what Paul from Seattle said, and as far as Cuba, Bernie Sanders. And there's a double standard here. Since that famous press conference that Trump had in Helsinki, where he looked very weak, very pro-Putin, pro-Russia, the media should have jumped all over that, should still bring the video up, where he says he believes Putin, a known criminal, an assassin of killer of the press in Russia. And then the media, in other words, we're being set up all over again, like Paul said. The media is going to give Trump again free press, free coverage, and not report. Notice what the media does as far as Trump. Trump said this. Trump tweeted this. Trump did. They're not investigating. They're not being, how can I say, they're partial to him. We're being set up all over again by the media. When Bernie Sanders says that Castro educated the people of Cuba when he came into power, it's the fact. It's a fact. The people that came here in the mid-60s, 66 to be precise, they were very well educated. The children that flew on those airplanes that later on in history, President Johnson passed the Cuban Act, those children are now Republicans in the state of Florida, very well educated. And may I add, white-skinned Cubans.
Oh, and there's no question. No, it's because it's always the white Cubans who were benefiting from Batista and the previous regimes. The first time that black Cubans and darker-skinned Cubans had a shot at getting educated and really getting out of poverty was with Castro. And now, mind you, they still had their racial problems. There's no question about that. But my grandmother said to me, and she was a very dark-skinned woman, very African-looking woman. When my African friends see her, they go, "Oh my goodness, oh, you have a grandmother who's African." Oh, oh. She had different life options, very different than my father's mother would have had, who was the opposite. And so I think we just have to be mindful of who the media are, Dwight McKee, and who they are not. You said media, the medium. Please explain that again.
The medium, by definition, is the go-between between the advertisers and the audience. They try to interpret, give the illusion of interpreting in behalf of the audience what's happening in the world, but that's not their real role. Their real role is to use the audience as a deliverable for the advertisers, because that's how they get paid and that's how they make their money. If you want to understand the Cuban situation, all you need to understand is Godfather 2. That's what that's about. Is them taking over Cuba, using it as an economic base, and the mafia and the gangsters use it as a financial base. And Castro, seeing the unfairness of it all in overthrowing that government. That's what Godfather 2 is about. And then lastly, the reason that the white-skinned Cubans made such progress, the other reason is because they are part of the legacy of the original Spanish. They are the Spanish that came over to 1492, the whole constituency in Spain got kicked out of Spain, and many of them ended up in Cuba and in South America and set up the plantations there, the sugar plantations and the tobacco plantations. And so it really became an extension of slavery. And many of them were light-skinned Spanish that came over and put the African slaves to work in the Cuba plantations over there. And so there's a long history and legacy of slavery in Cuba that it goes since Columbus came over from the whole into the country.
You know, and that part of the story is not being told. When you look at, all of this hullabaloo about Bernie Sanders' remarks, and I'm glad he has not backed off of literacy and the advances that were made under Castro that the Cuban people supported. Wait. These are people who supported their own revolution. Which was their business. And you're right. You do need to watch Godfather 2. You really do, because when you see Godfather 2, you can say Al Pacino's character saw the inequality there, and he said, "These people are going to win. That is Castro, and the people are going to win. We're going to have to get out of here, because we're not going to be able to stay." You remember that part in the movie, Dwight and Roosevelt? It's when he was driving through the streets of Havana. That having been said, I think as you go into the debate tonight, just very quickly, Roosevelt, what are you going to be looking for?
I want, and this is one thing that hasn't been mentioned often enough, and that is police reform. And I think that's very important. Very important. That's one of the most important subjects. Okay, and that should have been mentioned last time. Should have been brought up to the forefront, because it's in our face. Our policemen are killing our children, brown, black, to be precise. And that's one of the things that I'm surprised the Democratic Party, in general, the candidates, haven't brought up.
Are you surprised, Dwight?
No, I want fairness and equality. It is that it's interesting to me that some questions and issues are being raised and others are being stayed away from. For example, and don't misinterpret this is just an example, is that they keep raising the issue with Bernie Sanders about how, because he's a Democratic socialist, how that's limited in this appeal, it may halt on his journey to the White House. But I've yet to hear anybody ask Pete that how does being gay affect the vote in the South that's very conservative, the Bible Belt. Many of them are very anti-gay and won't vote for a gay candidate. And the role that that's going to play ultimately in the election, the big election, particularly when it comes to trying to sway some Republican votes. Many of them who are evangelical, who are solidly anti-gay, and many of the black voters come out of very conservative Christian background and very anti that persuasion. But I've yet to hear them raise that question with Pete, whereas they pound that question, the question of unelectability, to Sanders and his crowd. I'm just looking for consistency and fairness.
Well, we are not going to fight it in the mainstream media. Roosevelt, I got about a minute before we have to go. Your final thought?
Final thought, too. Last time the candidates had a debate, they were in Las Vegas. One of the biggest mass shootings that this country's ever experienced, and none of that was brought up either. So these shootings, our children cannot even go to school. Our schools, we don't know if our children are coming back, and whether horrified because of the fact that the schools are not being brought up, the subject of shooting in schools. So that's another connection that I'm making here as far as this country where it's heading to is constantly under the NRA. We have a president that has been fed directly from the NRA money to support his reelection, not to mention his first election, which when he got $30 million. And that's all I have to say, Santita, and I thank you for it.
Of course. Dwight McKee, your final thought?
And then finally, on that same note, I have yet to hear them raise the question of anti-Semitism to Bloomberg. Is that there is this country is very, in many ways, very anti-Semitic, and in many ways, a lot of this alt-right is at least anti-Semitic as they are anti-black and anti-gay. And so the unelectability of Bloomberg, because he's Jewish, in the country that's as anti-Semitic as this country is, I've also yet to have been raised, yet to have seen to have been raised. And so again, I'm just looking for consistency in one standard. If it's good for the geese, it's good for the gander. If you're going to raise questions about this, you raise questions about that, and that, and that.
Well, everybody, I think we need to ask questions about this, and that, and that, and that, and this, and this, and this, and this. Because these issues impact us all. They do, they do, they do. That's why I wanted us to grade the media on the way to the debate tonight. Because I think that you need to listen to how the questions are framed, whom the questions are pointed toward. I mean, since everybody's expecting a pile-on with Bernie tonight, why? Okay, he's the front runner, that's part of it. What kinds of questions will be asked? Which questions will not be asked? All of that you need to be thinking about. Just think about what you really, really, really want, not what you expect. Really, think about that. Ask, if you were on that stage, and if you gathered up all your nerves and girded your loins, would you take someone to task about Medicare and Medicare for all and Medicare for all who want it? Would you do that? And isn't that the job of the media, of the journalists? They say they're speaking for you, but are they? Think about that, everybody. You really need to think about it. Everybody, like and share this show. Like and share the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Like and share this video today. And on YouTube, on the Santita Jackson Show, like and subscribe. Please run on over there and like and subscribe and tell your friends about us. Everybody, I love you. It's been wonderful being with you today, Roosevelt. Mwah. Dwight McKee. Mwah. Love you. Always, always love you, Roosevelt, whether we agree or disagree. I'm glad you stick with me. Thank you for giving me a chance. I feel that way about you too, Roosevelt. Even when I go, I gotta go. It reminds me of being with my brothers when we go, gotta go. before I say stop that. I love you. Mwah. I love you, Dwight. Mwah. Everybody, I'll see you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Let's call Dwight. What is he on? Is he on the? I don't want.
I let him go.
Okay. Well, I'll call him over here.
Oh, let me turn off.
Okay. Yeah. I wish I could put this on mic.